with us today from Huntington, West Virginia, Justin McElroy. Justin was kind enough to speak for us today, and I'm just going to hand it over to him. If you want to hold this, or we can put it
I asked to hold 3 mics because I felt like it's like a power play to hold more than. You should always be holding the. My first thing is you should always be holding the most mics in any room. Hi, I'm Justin McElroy. Before I tell you how to live your lives, I thought I would tell you how I lived mine, so you can decide for yourself whether or not that advice is worth anything. I think it's important to always consider the source. So, hey, I didn't realize when I agreed to do this that I would be standing for 45 minutes straight. I was sitting over there, I was thinking, man, I should really sit down. I should try to sit down for a few minutes because that's going to be 45 straight minutes. But I'm leaning now. Things are going good. Hey, guys. Hey. My name is Justin McElroy. I started writing about stuff. I'm not a game developer. I should have led with that. But I write about games and make stuff about games. But anyway, I started writing about games when I was 16 years old at a site called huntingtonnews.net, which was it may still be, I don't know, I haven't been by in a while, an outlet about local news and stuff. And I started writing about games because I grew up reading games journalism, and I was like a games journalism nerd. Like, I would obsess about individual people in the games journalism world. And hello. Individual people in the games journalism world. And I had subscriptions to like OPM and GamePro and Electronic Gaming Monthly and Nintendo Power, and you don't know any of these magazines because magazines don't exist anymore. But back in my day, we had magazines. And I grew up reading those, and I was like, well, I could do this probably. But I didn't think I could because I lived in Huntington, West Virginia, and this was 1990 or something. And so I didn't really have much hope of that. But once the internet got turned on, they finally flipped the switch. I was like, well, okay, at least I could write for myself about video games somewhere where someone could feasibly read them. So huntingtonnews.net paid me to write about video games, which is wild because it was a local news site and the games aren't different in West Virginia. Mario is pretty much the same everywhere, but I took their money and I wrote about video games, and I used that to write freelance for the Herald Dispatch about cool local teens in a section called The Edge. And I know, and so I get it. I didn't name it. Shut up. I wrote about this for a long time, and I did that, and I was sort of like in the back of my head, I always had the game journalism thing in my head, but I was like, I don't know, man. I can make a job of this writing about stuff, but I don't know that there's a world in which I'm actually writing about video games. So I used that to get hired full-time at a place called the Ironton Tribune over in beautiful Lawrence County, Ohio. And from the Ironton Tribune, I was still writing about video games. And it was mainly for myself because nobody was reading it. But I thought that it was important if I ever wanted to make a career of this that I practice and try to find what my voice was and try to find what I did. So I kept writing about it, and I emailed everybody, and I applied for every job, and I emailed every game website I could think of with pitches, and every magazine I could think of with pitches. And then eventually I barely started to make dents. I got to do reviews for Official Xbox Magazine and GamePro and PC Gamer, and didn't make it into EGM before it closed, but I started weaseling my way in through the back door, and once I got one credit, I was like, well, listen, I've written for GamePro, so I'm a professional. You can trust me while I'm at home in my sweatpants, like, but don't trust me, I don't know what I'm doing. But I wrote about video games freelance. I would tell people, like, give me the crappy games that you don't want to do, and I'll do them so you don't have to. And that worked for people who were doing this professionally. That gave them more time to play good games, and I would play the bad ones. And that wasn't very fun, But I did get $200. So I guess I was getting the winning end of that deal. So I, from the Ironton Tribune, I moved to the Herald Dispatch full time, where I wrote about Marshall and did that for a couple of years. And while I was there, I started applying at a place called Joystick, which used to be a video game blog that AOL ran. A lot of used to be's in this story, not as many as a lot more than the last time I told it. Anyway, Joystick used to be a video game website, and I applied there and didn't get the job. But I was used to that. That was pretty normal for me at that point. So I didn't think too much about it. And later, I emailed them again because I had written something that I was really proud of, and the editor-in-chief of that site, his name's Chris Grant, said, "Oh yeah, I remember your application. We really liked it." And in my head, I thought, "Well, you didn't like it enough to hire me, but okay, that's fine. All right, we really like it, so we want to bring you in for an interview." So I started working there part time, making $10 big for every post I wrote at Joystick, and so I wrote a lot of them. they foolishly didn't tell you how many you could write. It's like, well, I could write a lot. Like, you want me to write about Mario's hat is red. Why is that? I don't know. Let's find out in 150 words together. Thank you for your $10. I very much appreciate it. And I was doing that freelance for a couple of years. And then, weirdly, I stuck around long enough and worked hard enough and did enough stuff where I eventually got to be reviews editor. And we didn't do reviews at Joystick. And I said, hey, you should do reviews at Joystick. And I know the perfect person to lead that effort. A guy who needs insurance. So they made me full-time there. And I eventually became the managing editor, which is like the number 2 spot on at the website. And in 2011, Chris Grant and I and my brother Griffin and a few other people from Joystick left and formed with some other former editors-in-chiefs of different websites to make a site called Polygon, which I co-founded in 2012, and we launched that in 2012. And I am now the editor-at-large at Polygon.com, which means that I don't work as hard as I used to when I was the managing editor. That's because I got this other thing that I spun off from that. I started doing the Joystick podcast back in 2007, I think. And from that, I started doing a podcast with my brothers called My Brother, and Me that we started in 2010 that has continued to grow. And from that, I've done other podcasts like I have one called The Adventure Zone, and one I do with my wife who's a physician called Sawbones, and we tour those around. We turned My Brother, and Me into a TV show. I'm working on another TV show with FXX right now. We're turning The Adventure Zone into a graphic novel. And we're continuing to play like live shows. We just got back from tour in Atlanta and Nashville, where we did some shows down there. And we're touring about once a month at this point. So I had to kind of cut back at Polygon. I mainly do video content now at Polygon. My brother Griffin and I do a series called Monster Factory, where we play. Thank you, Patrick, for your great Monster Factory sign. We play Monster Factory together. We do games and try to break them, and we play games with character creators and try to make the ugliest characters we can, and then try to make them play the game even though they're broken, and we break them with mods because that's funnier and it's also cheating. Okay, so that's my story. Why I did it? The key takeaway is I've done all this stuff, and I'm listening to a bunch of stuff not so you can be like, wow, what a cool dude. But I mean a little bit because I'm a human being, so some of that's great. But the main reason I'm listing this stuff is I did it all from Huntington, West Virginia. I did not move. When Chris told me like, hey, you should move, I did not. He said I should move to New York because that's where the editorial team was. I did not do that. And when I was starting out in the mid to late 90s, I did not think that what I do now is possible. And in a sense, I was right. It wasn't. But because of the internet, you guys have been on there, right? Okay. Because of the internet, I'm able to do all this stuff from right here in Huntington, which is my home. So I had opportunities, and there are things that, like, when we were trying to do the My Brother and Me show, there was a lot of pressure from our agents to like move all 3 of us to Los Angeles because that makes like it easier to make TV shows because they make TV shows there. And we still refused. My brothers lived in Cincinnati and Austin, so we're not even together here in Huntington. So we didn't move, and we haven't moved, and we're not going to move to one of the bigger cities. And so why, I guess, is the question. So let me address that first. Why did we move? Number one, my family is here. I have a wife. I have a daughter and another daughter coming, and I have a dad and a stepmom and my wife's mom, and they all help us watch the kids, and I don't want to go someplace where I have to pay somebody to do that. And I like them having a relationship with their grandparents and their extended family. And so my family's here. That's the number one reason. It's not the last one, which we'll get to in a second. Number two, I like it here. I know where all the restaurants are. And I know where the good pizza is, and I know where the bad pizza is. And I know who has the good pizza rolls and who has the bad pizza rolls, and where the best gas station to get pepperoni rolls is, and where the bad ones are. And I don't want to go someplace where I don't know that, or God forbid, they don't have pepperoni rolls in gas stations. And then what am I supposed to have for lunch? I'm starving. Number three, and this is one that it took me a long time to realize. And I was talking to a freelance writer who I respected, and this is when I was first trying to get my foot in any door. They had no reason to talk to me. But he said, when I told him where I was and bemoaning the fact that like there's nothing happening here, there's no reason why I should stay here, I need to move. I told him where I lived, and he said, West Virginia, you live in a place with a lot of great stories. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, there are amazing people there, and and the amazing thing about them, one of the most amazing things about them, is people aren't talking about that. People aren't talking about the people that are there. They don't recognize how great the people are and their culture and the people, their stories. That's all untapped, and you're there. You can write those stories, and you have great access to that. And as I've done more podcasts and stuff like that, where I'm talking about my life a lot, the fact that I live here is something that people remember, and it's something that helps me stand out, which is really valuable if you're trying to get into a crowded field, or you want to try to make an impression on people. The fact that you are in West Virginia gives me a perspective that nobody else has. I bring a different perspective to that. We talk about Huntington and being from here a lot on our shows, and it all seems really funny and cool and unique because nobody else is from here except me. I mean, there are other people, but you know what I mean. Nobody else is from here except me, so I get to tell all those stories. Those are all mine, and that's my culture. And that's another. You look at games like Assassin's Creed is probably the best example, right? You look at Assassin's Creed. Every year, not every year, they took a little while off. Things got a little dark for Assassin's Creed there for a little while, but he's back today in stores. This is a paid ad for Assassin's Creed Origins, out today. I woke up at 6 so I could play before I came here, and I could be playing that now instead of being here with you, so please try to appreciate my time. But anyway, you look at a game like Assassin's Creed, right? And Assassin's Creed is set in a different cultural location with each iteration, right? Like you start out in like ancient, I guess it was Jerusalem, Israel in the first one, somewhere around there. And then you got the piracy, you got Victorian England, you've got the American Revolution, and those are all different cultural backgrounds, right? That's a template to work from, a palette that you can work from. And being from here, like you have a cultural experience that nobody else has, right? Like why can't an Assassin's Creed game be set in Huntington, despite the fact that the coal exchange building is only 14 stories tall and wouldn't be very impressive to eagle dive off of. Well, why can't we have games that are set here and are using the culture that is unique to you? And the answer is they could, and that's as a writer and as content creator, that's something that's big for me. The fact that I'm here makes it unique. Number 4, this is the last one. It's way cheaper to live here. Shh, don't tell anybody. But the cost of living in Huntington means that I can be a wealthy man while my peers struggle to pay the bills. And it's not exactly. Nah, just kidding. It is it is a great area to live because you can afford to make less. So you don't need to make as much as other people, which in a sense makes you more valuable, because if you just want to make games and make ends meet, that is a lot easier to do from a financial perspective here than in a city like San Francisco, which, like, if you aren't aware of the rent situation in San Francisco, I would encourage you to Google it and then freak yourself out, because it is buck wild. And that's not the case here. So that's really valuable. And that is not the number one reason. Number one reason, you can all remember, family. If my wife asked you, family was the first reason, he said, and he left cost of living for the last one. So, okay, why did that work for me? Because it doesn't work for a lot of people, and a lot of people end up moving, and a lot of people want to move to a San Francisco or a New York or Seattle or what have you. And I didn't want to, and so I realized that I would have to adapt the way that I was doing things if I wanted to make that work. Because the thing about, if you want to remain here, and you don't have to, I just think it's cool that you're from here. I think that that's amazing, and I want you to go into the world and make amazing things. But I realized that I wanted to stay here, and for me, the challenge there is there's not a clear path for that, right? Like, there's not a clear not enough people have walked that path to make it easy to know how to get from A to B, and still stay in this area. So for me, that meant hustling a lot. I emailed everybody to try to get a job. I sent clips to everybody. And anytime I would get a new gig, I would use that as an opportunity to do a whole other round of like, hey, I'm working here now, and please help me out, give me a job or something. But I did that constantly. And what that did for me is, one, it's the only way to get your foot in the door, because you do not know what your big opportunity looks like until afterwards. Think about that. Like, you don't know what the big thing is that is going to lead you to everything. I randomly sent an article I wrote about an FMV game starring Gallagher to Joystick, and that's what reminded Chris Grant that he liked my application. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't gone for that like tiny sliver of opportunity, I would not be here right now. And so you do not know what that opportunity looks like. What is it that could freak you out? And it should freak you out. The only answer to that is to try everything. Like, do all of it. Like, whatever you have an opportunity to do, go after it. Second, I try to be really good to people. The challenge, and we'll talk about challenges here in a second, but like, one of the big challenges for me is that I don't have a community of people doing what I do in this area. And with the advent of the internet, even the groups of people who are doing this kind of work, and I would guess a lot of kinds of work, they're surprisingly small. And if you don't treat people well, people will know, and you will start to see those tiny slivers of opportunity close. When I found someone whose work I liked and respected and liked what I did, I held on to them. I was good to them. I tried to take care of them. I respected them. And I tried to treat everybody like that, because it's an old adage, but it's like 100% true. There are people that I like promoted up to intern who are now running video game websites and who I may someday need a job from. And I tried to be good to them. If I had treated them like nothing back when I was running the site and they were an intern, if I had treated them like nothing, that like I would be hosed pretty bad. And I don't want you to be in that scenario. So please, I have found, and it is a truism, the people who in any field treat people well and are truly kind and generous tend to rise above. People remember that so much longer than they'll remember that great joke you did about Master Chief's helmet, from what I have found. The third thing is I found a niche and I filled it. Lots of people could write about video games. I tried to write about video games in a funny way. Lots of people can do that too, but I tried to do it in the way that I thought was funny and that was the best fit for my voice. I know a guy, Bob Thompson, who's a pianist for Mountain Stage, it's an NPR show. And he told me this great story about the first time he tried to get a hired on a record label. He brought in his samples, and they listened to it, and they said, "This is fantastic. We can't do anything with you." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I could go out onto the street and find 5 pros that could make this album that you have made, that could make this demo for me. But you need to find the thing that only you can do, because that's what you will be paid for. Making the game that only you can make is the thing that is your currency. As a person, that is the thing you can trade for goods and services in your life. That is what you can get paid for, is to find the game that only you can make and make it better than anybody else. And that means you have to work a lot harder than everybody else, because you are not going to be able to fall back on those conventional paths of getting jobs in game development or whatever field you want. So find the thing that you can do better than anybody and do it. What are the downsides of what I do, of living here? Well, number one, I would say is, and we touched on it, networking is harder. I don't have if I want to talk to somebody for a story, I can't just go down to their office and bang on the door, and that's actually a pretty wild thing. Nobody does that. Nobody goes and bangs on game developers' door to be like, what color is Mario's hat? The next one. Like, that does not happen. But there are people who can go to game development studios and take a tour of the studio and talk to people at the studio and go to events fairly regularly, demos, who can go to, not stuff like E3 is something where everybody comes at one time, but there's like preview events all throughout the year where it's like, come out to this thing and we've got 40 computers set up and everybody's going to play through the new campaign of the new Assassin's Creed, and in those opportunities you can talk to people, you can build relationships with people, and that is really tough to do if you are living here. It's the only remedy for that is to try to stay in contact with people as much as you can. And the internet makes that a lot easier than it was, 15 years ago, but still it's something you have to be cognizant of. Travel is harder too, is the other big one. Whenever there are very few, like event-wise, very few opportunities for me to do work. I have to travel to GDC, to PAX, to E3, and because I'm flying out of West Virginia, I always have to get a connection, and that can make travel tougher, and it makes going to, even like if I want to go to New York, which is where the Polygon offices are, the Vox Media offices are, I have to get a connection through there, so it's like travel is much more onerous and much more expensive, and it's not like I'm going to drive to San Francisco for GDC, so that is an issue. That is something that you will struggle with for sure. So could this work for you? I don't know. I hope so. I hope that we can have more game development happening here in Huntington and in West Virginia. Here are the paths that I can see if that is the path you want to go down. I'm going to name 7 games, and I want you to tell me what connects them. Stardew Valley, Thomas Was Alone, Axiom Verge, Cave Story, Minecraft, Tetris. Anybody? One person. Stardew Valley, Thomas Was Alone, Braid, Axiom Verge, Cave Story, Minecraft, Tetris, which you may have heard of, all created by one person. Now, is Notch still making Minecraft on his own? He is not. He is now paying many people to do that for him while he uses his jet ski. So no, he is not still doing that. And a lot of those indie developers have gone on to work with other people. But Roller Coaster Tycoon as well, one person. Are you that one person? I don't know. That sounds very hard. You have to do a lot of stuff. You have to draw all the art and make the sounds with your mouth. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. You have to record that with a microphone. That's the way it is. That's pretty much how it works. You have to do all the uhs and all the shooting noises, and you have to draw all the guys, and that sounds really hard. But somebody did it. These people did it. You can do it. Why not? Yeah, there are lots of other examples. There's and you see people. The thing about indie game development is there's a lot of people doing it, but like that is a pathway. If you just have to be better than other people. You have to make the best game. And like I'm a firm believer that if you make something that is very high quality, and then the cream rises to the top, the best stuff I think does get seen by people. If you need a foothold to try to start to get some eyeballs, email me, justinmcelroy@gmail.com, and tell me you're from West Virginia and you're a game developer. I would love to help you. At least try to get some sort of like visibility out there, because I think it's very cool, and that's what you need to get started. Because the big thing is different for me, and is by extension different for you, is that when I was starting out, the games media were gatekeepers. The magazines at the time would say, these are the games we want to talk about. And they were pretty much all, it was a great system because they were pretty much all by the same AAA studios. It was pretty much all, EA, Microsoft, Sunsoft, Sony. But now as indie game developers are coming up, there's also indie games media creators, right? Like sites like Polygon don't have the sway that they used to, because there's people on YouTube that have huge followings, and there are so many games that are made into big successes because streamers start caring about them. So cultivating those relationships too with those people is a way to start to get visibility. And I really think that like there's a game, anybody play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds? Yeah, okay, a few people. Right, so like that was a small studio that nobody ever heard of, and they made this game that has gone from a very small team making a very simple idea to one of the biggest games in the world right now, and they're worth multiple billions of dollars. And the way that happened is people playing the game and saying, wow, this is really good. I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to tell other people about it. And then they're been on podcasts like Giant Bomb, they're talking about it, and then it goes out from there, and more people try it. But it happens because it's good, and not every great game is going to have that level of success. But I can tell you that only great games do. Like there aren't a lot of bad indie games that get super popular. It's got to be great, and I believe that you can do that because you're West Virginians, and I have faith. Another option, though, if you're wanting to go the game development route but don't necessarily want to live in another studio, and I was talking to friends who are working this way. One option is to work somewhere else for a while and then come back here. So, like, go to the big game development cities: San Francisco, Austin, Los Angeles, Seattle, Montreal, Tokyo, depending if you want to go that far, London, Toronto. They're all over, but go to one of those, get a foothold through various means, applying. I know QA is still one of the best routes to sort of start to get your foot in the door places. Go there, and then once you've made yourself known and also valuable, because you worked harder than everybody. Remember, we talked about that. You did a better job than anybody else, and everybody loves you, and they want you to come work for them. Once you do that, you can come back here. I didn't get successful because I was here. I got successful enough to stay here. And that is another route that a lot of people don't think of. You can make the inroads, make the connections, and then come back and do contracts, art assets, do contract programming work, that kind of stuff. If you want to be involved with one of those bigger studios, there's nothing that says you have to do it there forever. And again, smaller studios are spinning up all the time. There was not an Austin game development scene 10 years ago, and now you've got like companies like Arcane and people like that who are down there doing that kind of work, and that community is starting to build. There's no reason that can't happen here. What that means is you need to find the people in your class or the people here that you really like working with, and work with them and make cool stuff with them. And I guarantee you, if you make the cool stuff, I don't know if it's always going to be a financial success, but you can make something that you're really proud of. The other thing that I would say is, if I didn't start writing about video games full time, it took me about 10 years before I was doing it full time. Mainly what I was doing was working at Best Buy and Borders and Toys R Us and Olive Garden and Babbage's and even places that weren't at the mall. I worked at Blockbuster twice. But what I was doing is working there to make a steady paycheck and doing this stuff on the side, because that's a lot less scary than quitting your job and being like, well, how about it, world? Check me back in 2 years when I'm finished with my game, and also I don't have a paycheck for that entire time. But it's going to be a good game. I will have died of starvation, but it will be a great game that I'll complete from my car. But so, I didn't transition into doing this full time, and there's nothing that says that you have to either. Like, it's cool and fun to make games, and life isn't all about like what you do full time with your job. It's about the stuff that you make and the stuff that you're proud of, and putting that into the world. I play guitar, and I have for about 15 years. I'm bad at it. And I don't get any better, and I don't take classes. Why? Because I don't care. Because I like doing it for me, and I think it's fun. It's not my job, and it doesn't need to be my job. And that is definitely a path. Like, you do not need to make this your job until it does need to be your job. And you see a lot of people who go that route. I finally had to quit my day job because the demands for patching my game got to be too much, and it got to be too popular. Like, it does not have to be cut and dry. You can do this while doing that. There's tons of stories of people like the Five Nights at Freddy's guy. He started that while he was working full time somewhere else. So you can definitely go that route. It will be harder to do this and stay here. And I'm not saying that that's for you. If you want to go live in a big city, go for it. Go pay that $3,000 a month San Francisco rent. Please let me know how that works out. I'll be chilling here and enjoying my pepperoni rolls in my very affordable home. But I'm not telling you that you have to pursue a game development career and stay in Huntington. What I'm telling you is I believe in my heart that it is possible. And I believe that if anybody's going to do it, it's the people who are in this exact room right now, because the thing that I am missing, and the thing that you could have if you look around, is a community of people who are doing this same thing, and a community of people that maybe you'll work with. Maybe they have skills that you don't have, and you're going to make the next great thing together, but maybe they just inspire you to work harder, to do a better job. Maybe you learn from them. You see the things that they are doing and have them teach you those things. But like, that community is something that you could have, and maybe already do. I don't know, but that is a valuable asset. That like the only thing that is required for there to be a local game development scene is people making games locally. And if that is going to happen, it is the people who are in this room. And I firmly believe in my heart that that is possible. So the only thing you need to do is work harder than everybody else and be better than they are. And I think that you can do that. And that is all that I wanted to say. Want to do questions? If anybody has. Oh, no, I'm good. I'm trucking, man. Is there no questions? Questions, anybody? If there's no questions, then I'll pass the mic back to Josh. I want to ask. JustinMcElroy@gmail.com. I'm serious. If you have like anything that I can help with, please let me know, because I would love to be. Hi, I see you here right there. For podcasting specifically. So there are a couple things. Thank you very much. You can sit down. Nobody should have to stand as long as I have been standing. It is frankly ridiculous. The things that have worked well for me. One is I tried to find a very specific podcast that the Adventure Zone is my brothers and my dad playing Dungeons and Dragons with each other. And well, we used to play D&D. Now we're playing Fate. But anyway. We were playing a role-playing game together, and like a family playing a role-playing game is a pretty specific thing, but we're telling a pretty specific story with that show, and that is how we have differentiated it from the many, 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 many other podcasts that are out there. So finding a podcast idea that is unique, and also that you can summarize. There are so many podcasts out there that are like me and my friends are going to talk about movies. And that's cool. If you want to do that, like, in your spare time, that sounds really fun. I'd like to do that. But you're going to have a hard time bringing in listeners because it's not as unique of an angle. So finding a specific angle. The other thing in terms of promotion that I've found, the only thing that I've found is effective is when we got a few listeners, we treated them very well and asked them to tell other people. And like, that is the thing with word of mouth. Like, a big part of that is your thing is good, but the other part of that is that you ask people and you make people know that if this show is going to get heard by other people, that's the only way it's going to happen. And I think that's applicable to get the sort of projects that you all might be creating. Like, when you're starting, if you start to get people who are interested in what you're doing, they are like the most valuable resource you could possibly have, because that is the only way you're going to build a career. So taking care of people who like your stuff and asking them to tell other people about it and deputizing them to go out into the world and bring other people in, I think is the only form of promotion specific to podcasting, is the only form of promotion that I have ever found to be effective. But that's just me. Social media is great for that. I read all my replies that people send to me, and the people that aren't jerks stand out because it's Twitter. But the people who are cool and generous and kind, I notice, and I have struck up conversations with them. I think that, like, I will say this: social media is a real double-edged sword as far as networking goes, because you could say the wrong thing and really mess yourself up pretty bad, because I used to be a lot meaner back in the day. I used to make mean jokes at people's expense because I thought it was how I needed to be funny. And that's coming back to bite me so hard. And man, if somebody says something mean to me on social media anymore, life's too short. They're going in the old block trash can. And so you have to be careful. Like, I don't think your question is like, how can I be meaner to people on Twitter? But I think if you're nice and kind, it's a good way of starting those conversations, at least, and asking good questions and being interested in what people are doing. Like that is a great opportunity to start that. The thing that I think is also really another sort of path that I've seen a lot of people go down recently that I think is effective is like modding. There's a lot of people from modding that have something they can point to. And I think that that's really good for networking stuff, is like, there's nothing preventing you from starting something. And I think that, like, it's important to do networking when that is what you need to get to the next level, right? I didn't go to someone when I started, and say, hey, I'm about to start writing about video games. Well, let's make a connection. Because, like, who cares? Like, just go write about them. Like, go make something. And then get to that conversation where you can point to and say, like, I'm worth talking to, I'm worth engaging with, I made this neat thing. And I think that those two I have always seen go hand in hand, of like, the people that have the most success with networking are the people that are making cool stuff that people want to know about and want to get involved with. Hey, do you have a question? I know that a lot of outlets, Polygon included, have worked really hard to try to make our staff more representative of the people that play games. When we started Polygon, and I'm kind of embarrassed by this at this point, but this is the situation we ended up in. It's 2012. When we started Polygon, it was 8 dudes and 8 white dudes specifically, and it was short-sighted on our part, but we worked really hard to remedy that. And so, like, I think that the industry as a whole, especially on the game journalism side, I think after seeing what happened during that time period, has seen how important it is to have the voices of women in the newsroom and on their site, like, and bringing their perspective to the site. So I think that it's better. I think that it is still. I would be lying to you if I said it wasn't rough out there, and the people it is not as rough for me because again, it's like straight white dude, but like I've had to get a pretty thick skin, and because people can be really mean because it's the internet, and people can like dox your house and threaten your wife and stuff like that, which has happened. Like there's a dark side to it, but that's why I live in Huntington. Also, come get me. You're never gonna find me. You don't live anywhere near me. Threaten me all you want. You live 600 miles away. I know that for a fact. That is a joke, and that is not true. But yeah, it is rough, and I would say it is getting better because people are having those conversations more. But I would be lying if I said it was fixed. Hey. Honestly, the tipping point for me was I could make a life with this money, and it would be irresponsible to do it any other time if you think about it. But I got a job offer with Joystick that was for less money that I was making. It was a step down from a money perspective, but it was a step up in a wanting to get out of bed in the morning perspective. And for me, that was the tipping point. It was how many different, and I was stringing together a lot of different income sources to make that happen. I was still freelancing for OPM and OXM and GamePro and all these other the Escapists and all these other websites to try to cobble together some sort of career. But I didn't quit my day job until I made sure that I could make that happen. And I think that was, it's a boring answer, but the answer is like when I could afford it is the truth. And that's tough. And I don't think everybody gets to that point. And I think that's fine. I think that there are people who do amazing work that is very specific to them. There are people who like write freelance stuff for Polygon that's like long form deep dives into the creation of some obscure Japanese RPG or some obscure strategy game, or deep dive guides on certain games where it's like, oh man, I don't want to play that and tell people how to play it, but like I'm glad you're here. And if you're one of those people, it may not be a full-time career for you. It may be something you do on the side. And I think that is very cool and worthwhile and can still be very, very rewarding. Yeah. Find the people that you really love working with and who can make that a rewarding experience. Because I think that if it's people you sort of struggle to live with on a day-to-day basis, that's going to be tough, because when you start that, it probably should not be all three of you saying like, all right, October 1st, we're quitting our jobs. Let's do this. Let's make this game. And it's like, that's a rough look. So you're going to be doing it in your free time a lot. And if you're going to be spending your free time on something, it should be something that you enjoy doing and that you're passionate about. And ideally, people whose skills complement yours, people who do things. I can point to anybody I work with at Polygon, people that we hired when it started, and I can point to something that they do much better than I ever could. I can do that with my brothers, who I've made the majority of my content with. I can point at each of them and say, Travis is much better at writing individual jokes than I am. Griffin's much better at creating narrative than I am. But everybody I work with, I found something that they are much better at than I am. And I think that those are the people that you need to go after. If you find that person in your classes or in networking or whatever, like, and you click with them, those are the people that you want to work with. And that I think is the number one thing, is like finding good people and finding something that you're passionate about doing rather than trying to copy what someone else is doing, like making something different that will stand out together. I think it's going to be, yes, God? I think it's going to be your number one, is your number one strategy if you're starting out. I would say that the first thing I would say about that, and it is, he asked sort of where game industry-wise where we're going. The first thing I would say about that is it's cyclical and always changing. So like I can see what I kind of see happening in the next couple of years, but these things are cycles. Like, and I've seen the cycles repeat many times, like just in the 10 years since I've been doing, or oh God, 20 years I've been doing this. Oh man, oh boy, I'm really old. Just the time that I've been doing this, but The number one thing that I think that you are seeing is big AAA narrative games are not going to be a thing for a little bit. EA just canceled the Star Wars game that Amy Hennig was working on. She did Uncharted, and then came over to do the Star Wars game. And EA canceled it, and they gave a lot of corporate gobbledygook about why they were canceling it. But the answer is it was a single-player game, and they probably want to make Destiny or something like that. So I think that like the experiences that are not a self-contained story, but are rather like a long-tail multiplayer experience where you're buying a lot of loot chests and stuff like that, like games like Overwatch. I think in the immediate 18 months, you're going to see a lot of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds clones, because they're doing okay, and so you're going to see a lot of that. But the lack of AAA games, the AAA narrative-focused individual single-player experiences, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. It means that EA is not gonna. It means that, and you've seen people do the horror game Insomnia. I think was the name of it. Amnesia, thank you, yes. Amnesia was an indie team that made like a very narrative-focused single-player thing. And you've seen other, I played one, Event Zero, last year. It was a very small independent team that's very narrative. Gone Home and Tacoma, those are both like small indie teams that are making those story-based games. And the EAs of the world getting out of that pool means there's more room in the pool for you, because those people still like those games. It's just, it's harder to make sense of it if you're a huge corporation. You asked about VR too. I don't know. I think VR is neat. I think that I'm starting to wonder if we're ever going to get to a point where those are affordable enough and good enough where it's like everybody has them, which I think until we get to that point where everybody has them, I'm not sure it's going to make a lot of sense for the big companies to develop for them. I think that there is still a good opportunity for smaller developers to make inroads there, because that space is still burgeoning, and it's still a space where, like, it's the Wild West out there right now with VR stuff. If you can get in there and figure out how to do something better than anybody else has done it, like, you're looking for a way to set yourself apart. Like that seems like a pretty good one. But I don't know. It's crazy. It's always moving. It's always shifting. Everybody thought, free to play was going to be the only kind of way you'd experience games a couple of years ago, and it's definitely more prominent, but we have not gotten to that point yet. But I don't know. It's wild out there, y'all. Be careful. Hold each other close. Anyway, I guess that does it for me. Thanks. Oh, hey, sorry. In order, they are: San Francisco is number one. Don't go to San Francisco, guys. It's so expensive. It's so expensive. Don't go to San Francisco. That'd be really tough. Austin is huge. Los Angeles, Seattle, sort of like the Nintendo Microsoft region. Not a lot of development is happening in OA over there, but like Nintendo is up there. And then outside of Chicago too has a scene. It's not quite what it once was when like Midway and there was a bunch of other big players there, but Chicago has a scene. Tokyo, again internationally, Tokyo, London, a lot more stuff is happening in Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto than was. I know several people that. Sorry.
Canada's nice.
Yeah, it's nice up there, and they do a lot with taxes to make it good to develop games up there. I've had several friends that have like left America and gone to Canada to go make games at Ubisoft or some of the other studios up there. So those are the big ones that I am aware of. Portland too. There's a scene in Portland as well. Anything else? Cool. All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.